Srimad Bhagavatam. The last week's discussion was on, I guess, one of the key verses of the Bhagavatam, 1 to 11, one of the Paribhasha verses that talked about the three aspects of the absolute truth. And we will continue further discussions by Sutta Goswami in this context. So we'll start with the Mangalacharan verses. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udirayet Shanvatam Sukatha Krishna Punnashavana Kirtanam Hridayantasto Bhadrani Vidunoti Sutsatam Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavata Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Neshtiki Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Namahom Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Paschachadeshatarane Mukham Karoti Vachanam Pangam Langate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam. So 1 to 11, as we know, is the famous verse that defines Krishna as being one who can be realized in three aspects. He can be realized as Bhagwan, as Paramatma, and as Brahman. So the verse is Vadanti Tattva Tattvavidas Tattvam Yash Jnanam Advayam Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagwaniti Shabdayate. And while we completed the discussion, just wanted to also add a few analogies that Srila Prabhupada would give for us to understand this notion. So one of the questions also that was asked last time was that is this to be considered as Achinta Bheda Veda? Are these three realizations in the category of simultaneous oneness and difference? And I had promised to ask Narayani Mataji. Her response was similar to mine. She said she has never heard of it in that context, but she said, why not? After all, it's Achintya. I did a little bit of more research and I came across an article by Radhika Raman Prabhu, Dr. Ravi Gupta, who's, for those of you who don't know, he's a PhD in Vaishnava theology from Oxford University. And at least his opinion is, I didn't dig deep enough to know what was the basis of it, but him being a scholar would probably have some citations. But his opinion is that Achinta Bheda Veda Tattva does not apply to Krishna and his incarnations. It applies more so to Krishna and his energies. So historically it came by because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to reconcile the philosophies of the Sampradayas. And the prominent philosophies at that time was the Shuddha Dvaita philosophy of Madhavacharya, which basically said that Krishna and this material creation, including the jivas, are separate. So Shuddha Dvaita. Dvaita means two, that they are completely different. And then there was the philosophy of Ramanujacharya, that was Vishishta Dvaita. So Advaita are non-different, and Vishuddha means properties or features or qualities. So he talked about the oneness of the qualities. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he did not really coin the term. The term was coined later on by Jiva Goswami in one of his Sandarbhas. Actually, he wrote the Shat Sandarbhas, and then he wrote another Sandarbha, I forget the name, which was a commentary on the 6 Sandarbhas. So the part of the commentary that was commenting on the Paramatma Sandarbha, therein he talks about this Achinta Bheda. He uses this term Achinta Bheda Tattva to explain the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where he basically talks about the fact that how there is oneness between Krishna and the material world from a qualitative perspective, but differentiations from the perspective of quantity. The jiva is infinitesimal, Krishna is infinite. Krishna's energies are non-different from him, but they are dependent on Krishna, and Krishna is not dependent on them. So it's a whole discussion on its own, and it is complicated. That's why it's called Achintya. But to answer that question, it appears that the Achintya Bheda does not really apply to Krishna and his incarnations. So I wanted to share some analogies that Srila Prabhupada would use in this context to help us understand how these three are how these three can be perceived. Now again, analogies are analogies, and at one point Bhurijan Prabhu makes this point that analogies don't contain any spiritual truth in them. They're just mnemonics, they're just aids that help us understand. Sometimes people take analogies and extend them, which defeats the purpose of the analogy. They should be only taken in the context that they are given. So one of the famous analogies that Srila Prabhupada uses is that of sun. That he talks about the sunshine, the sun planet, and the sun deity, and how the sunshine can be perceived everywhere. It is disembodied, it is universally present, and that is like Brahman. But one can follow the sunshine into the sun planet, and that is like Paramatma, when one gets a little bit more understanding about the source of the sunshine. And just like everybody thinks that the sun is shining on them. So one will think that one looks up to the sun and sees that the sun is shining on him, or if there are 100 pots of water, the sun will appear to be on each and every pot of water. And that is the Paramatma realization. So that is Chit, understanding a little bit more. And then one can go to the sun planet and then meet Vivaswan, which is the sun god, and if he has the qualification, establish a relationship with him, and that is Bhagwan realization. So sunshine, sun planet, and the deity of the sun god. The second analogy, interesting analogy, I had actually not heard of it before, but I heard in a lecture Rampat Swami explaining this analogy as Srila Prabhupada had explained. And this is the analogy of the train. That in a village, there is a train that is going to be coming for the very first time. Nobody has seen a train. So the village elders, they are assembled at the platform, and they are asked to report back to the village describing the train. So then pretty soon the train is coming, and in the distance, they hear the rumble of the train, they see the smoke, and some of the elders, they head back and they say that, well, the train is a loud sound, it is smoke, and that's what train is. So that is the Brahman realization, Sat. So Sat means that acknowledging the existence. It is just an existential understanding. So some of the elders who had stayed back, they then saw the train come over the horizon. And they went back and reported, saying that the train, it's like a long arrangement of carriages. There is one extra big engine that seems to be pulling the other carriages. They're moving on this 2 parallel tracks, and that's the train. So that is Chit, having understanding of what the train looks like. And then finally, some elders who had stayed back even then, They waited till the train came in, the engine driver got down, the engineer got down, the passengers got down, they shook hands with them, they talked to them, and that is the Bhagwan realization, which is Anand, that is based on personal interaction. So that's the second analogy to explain Sat, Chit, and Anand. So Sat is one begins to have an existential understanding. Chit is when it is more intellectual, and Anand is when it is more experiential. And the final analogy that Prabhupada gave was with respect to the king, that in a kingdom, everywhere, everything is done so everything is being done under the authority of the king. So the seal of the king is being put on all the court orders. Any punishments or rewards are given under the seal of the king. Nobody has seen the king. Nobody knows the king, but the whole kingdom is being run under the authority of the king. So he's everywhere, but nobody knows him. So that is the Brahman realization or Sat, that just being cognizant. Then Chit is that the king has a council of ministers, and each of them are formulating various policies, understandings based on the desires of the king. So this is Chit, that they have more understanding what does the king want. And each one of them understands a personal particular aspect of the king. Maybe the home minister looks at one aspect, the one who is running the army, he looks at it a different aspect, the one who is running some other ministry, he may look at it, the king, at a different aspect. So each one of them has their own personal understanding of the king, which is Paramatma. And then finally there is the king's family. The king has a wife and a child, and they laugh and joke with the king, they play with the king, they know he is the king, but it is the complete understanding, which is the Bhagwan realization. So this is our segue into the next verse, which is the verse that we will start off doing this time, which is 1 to 12. Tachadadana muneya jnana vairagya yuktaya pashanti atmani chatmanam bhakti shuta grihitya. Translation: the seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Shruti. So the previous verse gave us introduction to the absolute truth, that it is Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagwan. Now Sutta Goswami is giving us an indication of how can we realize the absolute truth. So this verse talks more about Paramatma realization because it uses the word Atmanam. Atmanam is Paramatma, but also talks about is a segue into Bhagwan realization. So there are 4 aspects that this verse brings forth. So Sutta Goswami says, Tat Shraddhadana Muneya. Shraddhadana means seriously inquisitive. Then Jnana Vairagya Yuktena, which is imbued with knowledge and renunciation. Then Bhaktya, executes devotional service, Shruti Grahatya, as received from the scriptures. So essentially what Sutta Goswami is saying is that one who is seriously inquisitive, when pursues knowledge and renunciation, executed on the basis of devotional service according to the scriptures, will be able to understand the absolute truth. So this is the process that he is giving about understanding the absolute truth. So let's look at each of the components. So first is Shraddhadana, seriously inquisitive. So Seriously inquisitive means that one is not casual, in the sense that it is not just knowledge for the sake of knowledge, and not whimsically, which means a little bit of here, little bit of there. Shradadana also means that one has eagerness and attraction and faith to Krishna Katha. So Jiva Goswami comments that the ultimate result of this attraction to Krishna Katha is devotion to Krishna. And by that devotion, one will see Krishna himself. So the chain to bhakti here, one of the links is being put forth, which is Shradadana. Being seriously inquisitive, faithful, eager, having developed a taste for Krishna Katha, that process of realizing Krishna begins. So eagerness is very, very important. It is what starts this whole process of our devotional life. So in all our lives, we see that there was a point when we began to take to bhakti, when we began to develop an interest in Krishna consciousness. And one thing that is common, regardless of what the circumstances were, whether we were being preached by somebody, whether we read a book or whatever it is, the one thing that was common was eagerness, that we were so eager. Over time, that eagerness sometimes grows, sometimes goes down, but all of us will be able to relate to this point, that there was a lot of eagerness in us at that time to know about Krishna, which is the catalyst that drives us from material to spiritual realm. So Prabhupada, he tells a story, and Prabhupada has these wonderful stories. So he tells a story about a thief. And he was once looking, as thieves look, for opportunities to steal, and he happened to come across a group of people who were sitting, and somebody was reciting pastimes of Krishna. So the thief had no interest in Krishna, but he stopped to listen while he was looking for things to steal, and the person who was reciting was describing Krishna's beauty. He was describing how Krishna was adorned by all kinds of valuable jewels. He had gold and silver ornaments. So now the thief was interested. He became very, very, very eager to steal from Krishna. So everywhere he went around asking, where can I find Krishna? Where can I find Krishna? And then he found that Krishna is in Vrindavan. So then he went to Vrindavan, and there everywhere, with a lot of enthusiasm, because he was a dedicated thief and committed to stealing from Krishna, he was asking everybody, where can I find Krishna? Where can I find Krishna? So finally, he met Krishna, and Krishna was completely adorned with jewels. Small boy, Krishna in his childhood form, and so the thief approached Krishna, and he started speaking very pleasingly to Krishna, that you're wearing such nice jewels, and since I'm your friend, why don't you give me some of your jewels? And Krishna says, no, I really cannot. My mother will get upset at me. She gets upset if I lose my jewels. So in this conversation between the thief and Krishna, the thief, he lost all his desires for any material wealth. And then he says, okay, that's fine. You can keep the jewels. And then Krishna said, no. Actually, I was just joking. My jewels are yours. You can take the jewels. But by this time, the thief's heart had completely changed. And then he said that if you want to give me something, just give me your association. So we see that how this person went all the way from being an offender to being a devotee just because of his great eagerness to see Krishna. And there is a Prabhupada story also. So this is not a story told by Prabhupada, but a story that happened during Prabhupada's pastime. That when Prabhupada was preaching in India, so at that time in Bombay, there was this small boy So he was a vagrant. He was like a street urchin, and he would do various small-time petty crimes. He would steal people's wallets and do small thieves. Sometimes he would deliberately do it so that he could go to jail, and especially in winters, he could get some warmth. So once when he was in jail, he somehow came across a copy of Back to Godhead. And there was a picture of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada on his wrist had a very expensive watch. So some of Prabhupada's disciples would give him expensive gifts, and Prabhupada would keep it on for a while and then pass it on. So the picture was taken when the time Prabhupada was wearing a very expensive watch. And this young boy, so he became very determined to steal the watch. So as soon as he was released from jail, he took the Back to Godhead, found out where the temple was, and went over there and asked for Prabhupada. And this was Juhu Beach. And they said, well, Prabhupada is not over here. He said, okay, I will wait for him. He didn't say that he wanted to steal the watch. So they said, well, you can wait, fine, you can be with us, do some service. So while he was living over there, they shaved him up, he began to chant, and all the time he was waiting for Prabhupada to steal the watch. So eventually Prabhupada did not come, so then he found out that Prabhupada was in Chennai. So then he went to Chennai. And he convinced the devotees in Bombay to give him money so that he could go to Chennai to meet Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada at that time was having a big Pandal program. So he went and sat down right up in the front line. And Prabhupada was transcendental. So after the class, he specifically asked for the boy to come and meet him. So then he came and met, and then Prabhupada said, what is it that you want? So by this time, this boy, he had been chanting and doing service, so he had a change of heart to some extent. So he frankly and openly he said to Prabhupada that I actually came here to steal your watch. And Prabhupada said, okay, you can take my watch. But the boy said, but no, now I'm not interested in your watch anymore. I just want to serve you. And then Prabhupada laughed and he says that you stay with me and I will give you much more than this watch. And the boy actually did stay with Prabhupada. He was initiated, his initiated name was Haridas Prabhu. And later on, he became a very, very rich person. He became a movie producer, and he produces, even now he produces the ITV part of the ISKCON television. He produces, he has several very expensive flats in Bombay. He apparently produced movies, commercial movies also, but also very dedicated to Prabhupada. So, so this enthusiasm is so to speak, like when a train moves and there is coal that is put in the furnace, and then that drives the train. So this enthusiasm is that fuel that drives our activities in bhakti. Second thing is, in the verse is jnana vairagya bhakti. So what is the quality of this enthusiasm? So initially it may be starting off as material, but eventually it becomes imbued with jnana vairagya yuktaya. Yuktaya means imbued. So eventually it gets imbued with jnana and vairagya. And this is what makes the bhakti tradition unique. So, like Sripad Shankaracharya, he says that first sannyas, then gyan. First renunciation, then study the scriptures. But what we say is, no need for sannyas, no need for any renunciation. The knowledge is available to you. So we accept without, so no need for sannyas. In fact, we say no need for even gyan. That even if you don't have knowledge, that is fine. Eagerness is enough. And eagerness will eventually manifest in terms of gyan and vairagya. So what does it eventually manifest into? That one must be shraddhadana. One must be seriously inquisitive. So that eagerness should manifest into a desire to study the scriptures. And as we study the scriptures, we should apply what we have learned in the form of Vairagya. And so Prabhupada said, regardless of whatever stage we are, whether we are at the stage of eagerness, Gyan or Vairagya, the common denominator is Bhakti. So he says that our goal, our aim, regardless of our external situation, is to please the Supreme Personality, to please the Supreme Authority of the Personality of Godhead. So in the commentary to this verse, Sridhar Swami, he tries to bring forth the interplay between these three things, Gyan, Vairagya and Bhakti. So he says that this text impresses upon the reader's mind that the Tattvam mentioned in 1 to 11 can be realized through unswerving devotional service. None of the three aspects of the Absolute, Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan, can be realized without practicing Bhakti. Additionally, so this is what Sridhar Swami says, that Bhakti is the bedrock on which eagerness, knowledge and renunciation grows. So Jiva Goswami also comments on this, and he says that the knowers of the absolute truth say that the wealth, artha, is not for sense enjoyment. Its purpose is only to preserve one's life. The purpose of life is not to attain wealth or heavenly kingdoms, therefore, but to know the absolute truth. So, Gyan teaches us Vairagya, and when one performs Bhakti on this platform, one attains the absolute truth. So Gurujan Prabhu makes a very interesting statement that through Gyan, we get to know what we should do. Through Vairagya, we are able to do it. So this is the interplay of Gyan Vairagya. So while Gyan and Vairagya may be dependent on Bhakti, but Bhakti itself is independent. So if one gets Bhakti one way or the other, then Gyan and Vairagya will happen automatically. So we saw that verse 1 to 7, Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chata Dahitukam. That through Vasudeva Bhagavate, through the worship of Vasudeva, Janatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chata Dahitukam. Both Gyan and Vairagya will appear. So how should this bhakti be executed? That forms the basis of Gyan and Vairagya. So the scriptures say that they should be done according to the instructions in the scriptures. It says Shruti Grihitaya, as per the scriptures. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that unless, therefore, devotional service is established on the principles of Shruti, Smriti, Puran, or Pancharat authorities, to make show of devotional service should be at once rejected. So Prabhupada over here is basically giving a translation of the famous words from Padma Puran, the Shruti, Smriti, Purnadi, Pancharatrik Vidigana, Ekanter Harer Bhakter Utpati Eva Kalpate. So, so the point that is made over here is that bhakti is so potent that it is not dependent on Gyan, it is not dependent on Vairagya, not even dependent on eagerness, and in the initial stage, it is not even dependent on the rules and regulations of the scriptures. All these points are being made over here to give us a roadmap of bhakti, which is what this chapter does. Later on, it will give us a step-by-step roadmap of bhakti. That bhakti will grow when it is practiced according to the rules and regulations. Bhakti will grow when Gyan is there. Bhakti will grow when Vairagya is there. But bhakti is not dependent on any one of them. It could also grow in the absence of all of them. or even in the presence of all of them, bhakti may not grow. So Srila Prabhupada, in order to establish this, so this is a verse that Prabhupada was very fond of quoting, and it's an interesting verse because it's a Prabhupada verse. So in the sense that it's basically a combination of various verses from the scriptures, and Prabhupada, it's not clear whether Prabhupada constructed it himself or he heard it, but he definitely quoted it very often. So the verse says, Yena tena prakrena mana Krishna niveshayat sarvavidhi nishedhyasho etayoreva kinkara. So the first word, Yena tera prakarena, which means that somehow or the else. That Yena means by which, Tena means by that, and prakarena means by any means. So by this means, by that means, by any means, Mana Krishna Nishevayat. So this is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, not a verse, this is a line from the verse 7.1.32, which is Mana Krishna Nishevayat, which means that one should fix one's mind to Krishna. And the next two lines, Sarvavidi Nishedya Shor Etayoreva Kinkara, is actually another two lines from a different verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The verse is Satatam
Satatam Kirtayanto Mam.
No, Satatam Vismartyavyor na Chatur Chet Sarvavidhi Nishedya. I forget the first slides. Satatam Smartavyor Vishnu Vismartavyor Chatur Chet Sarvavidhi Nishedya Shor Etayoreva Kinkara. Which means that one must always remember Krishna, one must never forget Krishna. All rules and regulations are subservient to this. So Prabhupada kind of combined these and comes up with a verse which is essentially the same principle, the same point that Narad Muni is making in 7.132, which is if somehow there's Zinatena Prakarena, Mana Krishna Niveshiyat, one is able to fix their mind on Krishna, Sarvavidhi Nishedya Shor, everything else, Jnana, Vairagya, eagerness, Etayoreva Kinkara, they are supporting it. They are subservient to it. So, so the previous verse talks about the absolute truth, and this verse talks about how is it possible. By knowledge, one achieves. So the verse talks about three things: Jnana, Vairagya, Bhakti. So by knowledge, Gyan, one can attain Brahman realization. By Vairagya, one can attain Paramatma realization. And finally, when one executes Bhakti as per the prescribed scriptures, one gets Bhagwan realization. So this is the progression of Bhakti. And again, the point made by Burijan Prabhu is very relevant, that by Gyan, we know what needs to be done. By Vairagya, we are able to do it. But at each and every stage, we need the support and blessings of Bhakti Devi. Okay, so so this is 1 to 12. I'll stop here and see if there are any if there is any discussion, questions or comments. Okay, so if not, I will proceed to the.
Bhayahari Prabhu, it is your phone.
Okay, sorry about that. So we'll do the next verse. Okay. Atā pumbir dvijasreshta varnashram vibhagashah svanasthasya dharmasya samsutir haritoshanam. O best among the twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste division and orders of life is to please the personality of Godhead. So what do you do now? So Sutta Goswami has given us Gyan, he's given us Vairagya, he has even given us Bhakti. Now we come to the practical aspect of it. So what does one do with all this? What one does is that one, while staying in the position of Varna and Ashram, will perform activities in order to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is Swadharma that is executed, or rather the other way around, this is Paradharma that is executed on the platform of Swadharma. So if you remember earlier on, Sutta Goswami had completely rejected Swadharma. Dharma projita kaitaba parmo nirmat saranam satam. So cheating religion. And the cheating religion was what? It was Varnashram Dharma. That which basically gives us material enjoyment. But at this point, he is reintroducing Swadharma, but he is reintroducing it on the platform of Paradharma. So this is what is considered to be Daivi Varnashram. So it's not that Sutta Goswami is contradicting himself, but he is refining the process. So the verse begins with Ata Pumbir. So Ata means therefore. And therefore what it means is, so therefore is linking cause and effect. So, so in the previous verse, the Supreme Personality was defined, the way to see the Supreme Personality through Gyan, Vairagya and Bhakti was given. And now he says, therefore, now that you know this, what is it that you do? You must now act in a way that pleases Krishna. So he says, Haritoshanam. And in this way, you will achieve the highest perfection, Samsiddhir. So this phrase, Samsiddhir Hari Toshanam, which translates to the highest perfection is pleasing Krishna, is, so this is a phrase that you will see Prabhupada use quite often. Samsiddhir Hari Toshanam or just Hari Toshanam. And this is actually from this verse, that the highest perfection is, Samsiddhir is Haritoshanam, doing something for the pleasure of Krishna. And why is that important? Because if Krishna is satisfied, automatically everything becomes satisfied. Automatically everybody becomes satisfied. Automatically all requirements are fulfilled. So in this context, Srila Prabhupada, he tells a story from Mahabharata of that when the Pandavas were in exile, Maharaj Yudhishthir, he would feel bad because they were still kings, and the duty of the king was to feed the Brahmanas. But when they were in exile, they did not have any ways to, they had no facility. So when Brahmanas would come and visit them, Maharaj Yudhishthir would feel very bad. So then he performed austerities to please Suryadev. And then Suryadev gave him a special pot called, it was called an Akshaya Patra. So Akshaya means one that diminishes, Akshaya means that one that never diminishes. And he gave this benediction that as long as Draupadi does not eat, this pot will produce as much food as you desire. And then he said that this will stay with you for 12 years, for the duration of your stay in the forest. So Draupadi and the Pandavas were happy that any number of brahmanas would come, Draupadi would feed them opulently, and then when everybody was fed, she would eat herself. So Duryodhana, of course, knew about it. So once it so happened that Durvasha Muni, he visited the palace of Duryodhana. And Durvasha Muni is very picky. So he was, so he made many demands on Duryodhana. In the middle of the night, he would ask for opulent food, or he would ask to be taken out on a chariot. So at all odd times, he would make odd requests. But Duryodhana was very nicely kept serving Durvasha Muni, and Durvasha Muni was very happy. He said, "You ask for any benediction." So Duryodhana said that my brothers, the Pandavas, are living in the forest, and I fear that they're not getting a lot of any good association. So why don't you go with your 10,000 disciples and visit them? But my request is that you visit them later in the afternoon and you honor prasadam with them. So because Duryodhana knew of this arrangement that Draupadi had, he wanted to put them in trouble. And to some extent, that's the nature of demoniac people. Duryodhana could have asked some benediction for his own welfare. But people who are demoniac, they are more pained by the welfare of others. And they are more hurt when others do well as opposed to themselves. So, so like there was this devotee of Lord Shiva, and he had a neighbor that he hated. So he performed austerities, and Lord Shiva came and said that I'll give you any benediction, but on the condition that whatever I give you, your neighbor gets twice that much. So, and this person was so envious of his neighbor that he said to Lord Shiva, "You take away one of my eyes," because he wanted his neighbor to be blind. So similarly, Duryodhana, he could have asked for something that could have benefited him, but he wanted to trouble the Pandavas. So Durvasha Rishi said okay, and then he went at the time with his 10,000 disciples, and Draupadi had already eaten. And then he said, "I'm going to take a bath and I will come back and eat." So now Draupadi is in anxiety. And who does she turn to? Krishna. So she says, "Krishna, Krishna, Krishna," and Krishna comes, and she then tells about the situation. So then Krishna says that, "Are you sure there's no food in the Akshay Patra?" She said, "No, I fed everybody, I washed it, there's nothing." So Krishna said, "Show me." So right at the bottom of that patra was a small grain that was left, and then Krishna, he took that grain and ate it. And then as soon as he ate it, Durvasha Muni, all his 10,000 disciples, they were completely satiated. Not only him, but the entire universe was satiated. And Durvasha Muni, he understood that now he is in trouble. So he didn't want to take any more chances. So he had already suffered when he had tried to challenge Amrish Maharaj. So quietly, without going back to Yudhishthira Maharaj, he immediately with his disciples, he went away. So Prabhupada would give this story give this pastime to indicate that if Krishna is satisfied, everybody is satisfied. And that's what this verse is telling us. Samsadir Hari Toshanam. And how is the Samsadir Hari Toshanam? Simply by staying in our own varna and ashram, but thinking about how to please Krishna. So this verse goes back to the point we were discussing in the previous verse. Know that pleasing Krishna, you don't have to become a sannyasi. You don't have to become a great Vedantist. You don't even have to become a great devotee. All you have to simply do is to dovetail whatever is being done in the service of Krishna. So another time Srila Prabhupada was asking that how do we know that Krishna is pleased? And Satsvarup Maharaj, in one of his lectures on this verse, he says that the answer is given in the verse 126, Savai Pumsha Paro Dharmo Yeto Bhakti Radhoksajaya, that our attraction for hearing about Krishna is provoked. We have no material motivation. We have no interruption and we feel satisfaction. And at different points, Srila Prabhupada, when he was asked, he gave different answers which were all related. Like he would say that, how do you know Krishna is pleased with you? If your attraction for chanting is increasing. How do you know Krishna is pleased? If your guru is pleased with you. If the other devotees are pleased. If you are being given more opportunities to serve. If you are experiencing material renunciation. And if you are beginning to feel real happiness. Different times he gave combination of one or more. But he said all of these you should understand to be symptoms of Krishna's pleasure. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada confirms that this verse is a description of Devi Varnashram. So he says, in the best interest of human society, there must be such divisions of life, otherwise no social institution can grow in a healthy state. And in each and every one of the above mentioned divisions of life, the aim must be to please the supreme authority of the personality of Godhead. The institutional function of human society is known as the system of Varnashram, which is quite natural for the civilized life. The Varnashram institution is constructed to enable one to realize the absolute truth. So Prabhupada is saying that we should not think Dharma Projita Ketabo, that we are rejecting the cheating religion, does not mean that we reject Varnashram. What we are rejecting is the material conception that is imbued in the common understanding of Varnashram and replace it with Devi Varnashram. That while we are situated in a Varna or an ashram, and Prabhupada says whether we like it or not, we will be situated in a particular Varna or ashram. So the best thing is that we use it. So Varnashram says that we use dharma and artha for kam. And Devi Varnashram says that artha and kam should be used for moksha. So the goal of the Devi Varnashram is a little different, even though it still plays on the four purusharthas of dharma, artha, kam and moksha, but it puts moksha as the important and predominating purusharth. That everything that we do, dharma, artha and kam, it should be only for the purpose of moksha. Whereas with the regular Varnashram, the understanding is that based on dharma we get artha, based on artha we get kam, and later on at some point of time we aspire for moksha. So externally, Devi, so other Varnashram is also known as Asurik Varnashram. So externally, Devi Varnashram and Asurik Varnashram, they may appear to be the same, but what distinguishes the two is the mentality of the practitioner. So the one who is following Devi Varnashram is based on the understanding of the Ishavashyam Idam Sarvam, that everything belongs to Krishna. So when one is based on that understanding, there is no question of kam. Because how can you enjoy something that you know does not belong to you? So everything, your own life, your body, your family members, your wealth, it is meant to please Krishna. And automatically everything becomes dovetailed. Dharma, artha and kam, even moksha. One even says to Krishna that whether you liberate me or not, it is okay, as long as I have an opportunity to serve you. So Radhanath Maharaj tells an interesting story about to distinguish this concept of internal and external renunciation. And so long story, you may have all heard it. So I'll kind of speak in a shortened format. That Sripad Ramanujacharya, he had a Grahastha disciple by the name of Dhanurdas, and he was a Grahastha. He had a beautiful wife. He was well off, and Ramanujacharya really liked him. But his sannyasi disciples, they were upset that he's a Grahastha, lower ashram. He's apparently an enjoyer, lives opulently. How could Guru Maharaj give him mercy? So when Ramacharya heard about it, then he wanted to illustrate the tattva to his disciples. So he asked one of his brahmachari servants that when the sannyasis were taking a bath, he went and asked them to exchange their coppins. Coppins is kind of like the cloth that they wear for the underwear. And when the sannyasis came back from the bath and they found out that the coppins were exchanged, they started quarreling with one another. That no, this is my coppin, this is your coppin, etc. And the brahmachari observed it and went back and reported to Ramacharya. Then he asked the same brahmachari to go and take off the jewels, steal the jewels from the wife of Dhanurdas. So when Dhanurdas' wife was sleeping, the brahmachari went in and he started taking the jewelry of her body. And when he had finished removing the jewelry on one part of the body, she turned over. So the brahmachari got scared, thinking that she had awoken, and he ran away. But he stayed by the window to observe what happened. So after some time, Dhanurdas came, and the wife said that looks like these Guru Maharaj's ashram, they are in a lot of financial difficulty. So how do you say that? He says, well, I was sleeping, and one of his disciples actually came and was stealing the jewelry right off my body. And so Dhanurdas said, what did you do? And she said, well, I turned over. So he started chastising his wife. He says, why did you turn over? You scared him away. You should have let him steal all the jewelry. And the wife said, no, the reason I turned over, because he had already stolen all the jewelry from that part of the body. So I turned over so that he could steal the jewelry from the other part of my body. And the brahmachari went back and reported to Ramanuja. So then Ramanuja called back his sannyasi disciples, and then he said that you have nothing, but you're attached to that. And Dhanurdas, he has so much, but he has detached from that. So he is more a sannyasi than you are. So it illustrates this verse from Bhagavad Gita, Yastra Indrani Manasa Niyamarbata Arjuna Karmendriya Karma Yogam Asakta Sa Vishasyate. That better for a person to renounce internally rather than to renounce externally, and the mind keeps dwelling on that. So this verse, it talks to us about how one can make progress in devotional life while staying in your varna and ashram. So we see the path that Sutta Goswami is taking us, that he defined the absolute truth as Bhagwan Paramatma and Brahman. He talked about how to attain it through Jnana, Vairagya and Bhakti, and then how to execute this, which is Daivi Varnashram. So now he will talk more about the basis of this execution. What is the practical way to execute it? So again, I'll stop here for a few minutes and see if there's any questions or comments. Okay. If not, then we will go on to the next verse. So this is 1 to 14. Tasmadekena manasa bhagavan satvatam pati shrutuvaya kritivayascha dheya pujayscha nityada. Therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. So we see another tasmad, another therefore. Previous words we have also seen therefore. Tasmad, one should imbued with Jnana and Vairagya, perform bhakti. Now he is saying therefore with one pointed attention. So, so in the previous verse, we had seen about Sutta Goswami recommending that while we stay in a current varna, a current occupation, an ashram, our current stage of life, we please Krishna. We do Haritoshanam. This verse is a how to do that. What is the secret of practicing daily Varnashram? And the secret, to some extent, was revealed, which is do everything for the pleasure of Krishna. So one may ask, how do we please Krishna? So this verse says, therefore, if you want to please Krishna, you must first know him as your protector. Sattvam Pati. How is this accomplished? This is accomplished by hearing, Shravanam, glorification, Kirtanam, remembrance, Smaranam, and by worship, which is Pujanam. So these are the 4 angas of bhakti. These are 4 of the 9 angas that Prahlad Maharaj says. So Sutta Goswami said, Tasmad ekena manasa Bhagavan Sattvatam Pati Shrutvaya, which is hearing, Kritvaya, which is glorification, Dheya, which is meditating, Pujasya, which is by worship, Nityada, always. So this is the how to part. So how do we please Krishna? By doing these activities. And the purport Srila Prabhupada says, in any one of the above mentioned castes and orders of life, the 4 processes, namely glorifying, hearing, remembering, and worshipping, are general occupations. Without the principles of life, no one can exist. Activities of the living being involve engagement in these 4 different principles of life. Especially in modern society, all activities are more or less dependent on hearing and glorifying. So Prabhupada actually shrinks this list of 4 to 2, which is hearing and glorifying. There. So Srila Swami, he says that religion without bhakti is toil. It's useless work. And then Jiva Goswami says that the desire to regularly hear the name and glories of Krishna is bhakti. So we see what the acharyas are giving us is more and more specificity. Bhakti is a general term. That so many people say that I am a Krishna Bhakta. Once a person in our temple, this was a new person, an innocent person, but very, very new. And he was introduced in the Sunday feast as somebody who had come in to the temple, and he had started doing service. He was interested in Krishna consciousness. So he was asked to speak a little bit about himself. And then he gets up and he picks up the mic and he says that I really like coming to the temple because I'm a pure devotee of Krishna. I really like serving the devotees because my heart is pure. And the more seasoned devotees, they were smiling. And of course, everybody is compassionate. But emotionally, people will always think of themselves like this, that I'm a devotee, I'm a pure devotee. But what the acharyas are giving us is the briefing. Somebody says, I'm a pure devotee, and then one can ask him that, how is your hearing and chanting? Are you attracted to listening to Krishna Katha? Are you attracted to chanting the holy name? Are you attracted to discussing the activities of Krishna with other people? These are the more tangible, quantifiable aspects. And then how can you? So once you hear about Krishna, the next thing that you need to do is you speak about him. Prabhupada was very, very insistent on this. The Shrotavasya should always be followed by Kirtavasya. That if you hear and don't speak about him, you're not being fair. And Prabhupada, that is why very early he started Back to Godhead, because he himself wanted to preach. And when he established ISKCON, the first thing that one of the first things that he restarted was Back to Godhead, and he would encourage all his disciples to write, because that was whether they were preachers or not, he would encourage everybody to write, because that was their platform for Kirtasya. Kirtasya is not just singing or chanting, but also preaching, also speaking. And once when one follows the Shrotasya and Kirtasya, the next thing that comes is that one begins to meditate. So, like Sharang Prabhu knows that Tuesdays we have a smaller group of people, and different people take turns to speak about Bhagavad Gita, the Bhakti Shastri books. And one of the common realizations that is shared by the devotees is that when we are preparing to speak, our realizations are a lot deeper. Our understanding is much more complete, because when you are getting ready to do kirtavya, then automatically what happens is dheya. You have to meditate on that topic. You have to think deeply about it, how best to explain it, how best to present this in the more contemporary context. So one may wonder at this point that I have so much of karma that I have no attraction to either hearing or chanting, let alone meditating or worshipping. What to do about it? So Sutta Goswami was talking about the path. So Sutta Goswami was talking about the path to bhakti. Now he's going to be talking a little bit about the obstacles, and that's what makes it complete. That he not only tells you what to do, he also tells you how to circumvent the obstacles. So we should actually. So I think Lalita Mataji's mic is open. Maybe it's a good idea to mute it.
I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. So we'll do the next verse, and after that we'll stop for discussions. 1 to 15. Yadanudhyasena yukta karmakranti nibandanam chindanti kovidastasya kona kuryat katharatim. Translation. With sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work, karma, by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to the message? So after the previous verse, which talks about the importance of hearing, chanting, meditating, and worshipping, one may say that I don't have any attraction for it. And the reason is that one is bound by the karma of the past and present activities. So Sutta Goswami says, I have a solution to that. That with sword in hand, intelligent men can cut through these knots of binding reactionary work simply by remembering the personality of Godhead. So this karma that we are in, it's like a knot, and it's a very complicated knot, because there are different kind of strings that are entwined in it. There is the reaction to our karma, and then there is a desire for karma. So, and one of them is feeding the other. So based on our desires, we execute karma, and then based on that execution of the karma, we have reactions. So as one tries to unentangle this knot, the knot is a dynamic knot. It itself is growing and becoming more and more entangling. So how to untangle this knot? The Vedic Varnashram system, not the Devi, but just the Asuric Varnashram, that recommends a gradual process. That one patiently exhausts the reaction of their previous karmas, and then while they're waiting for this to be exhausted, they learn to work without attachment, with detachment, so that they don't generate any new karma. And that's how the knot gradually becomes weakened. But it's a very difficult process, because while you're waiting for your previous reactions to get mitigated, you still have desires which will create new reactions for you. So there is the Srimad Bhagavatam. It gives us an out-of-the-box solution, and one of the analogies that is given over here is the analogy of the Gordian knot. So this is a story from Greek mythology, that there was a kingdom by the name of Phrygia, and at some point, because of certain events, they were left without a king. So the oracle, who was kind of like the priest for them, he said that the next person who will come into this kingdom on a cart will make them king. So it so happened that a farmer who was coming with his vegetables and the cart came in, and his name was Gordius, so they made him the king. So he became a very famous king. The city of Gordia was named after him, and his son was Midas. So this is the famous Midas of the Midas touch, the one who touched everything and became gold. So out of gratitude, Midas, he erected so there was a city that was named after his father Gordia. So in the center of the city, he erected a pole. And the cart that his father had come in, he tied that to the pole with a very complicated, intricate knot. And the oracle, he gave this prediction that anybody who would unravel that knot will become the emperor of Asia. So many kings and other people came and they tried to unravel the knot, but nobody succeeded. Then in 4th century BC, Alexander the Great came in. And what did he do? He took out his sword and he cut the knot. So that is the out-of-the-box solution that Srimad Bhagavatam is giving to us. That let's not worry about untangling this knot, because it cannot be untangled. But the recommendation is that we keep this But the recommendation is that we take this sword of bhakti and simply cut this knot. So what this does is that it protects us from the ongoing onslaughts of Maya. So Maya Devi has two propensities. So there is one propensity that is known as Prashikapatika. So Prashikapatika, what it does is that whenever we try to take to spirituality, it will push us back to material enjoyment through different means. So it is the opposite of Gyan. So it will make us doubt about spirituality. Who knows if it is true or not, etc. And it will pull us back to material gain. The second is Avrantmika. So what Avrantmika does is that it makes us feel that the material world is a happy place to be in. So whatever little that we get in the material world, it makes us feel that it is worth having. So that is the opposite of Vairagya. So Maya Devi, by these two potencies, Prashikapatika and Avaranmatika, it makes us more and more secure within the material world. So what the Bhagavatam is saying is that don't worry about trying to unravel this knot that is built on these twines of desires and karmic reactions. Don't worry about trying to untie this knot when you yourself are covered. Prabhupada would say that how can a drowning person save another drowning person? How can a person who is himself illusioned give light to another person? So how can somebody who is already covered by these potencies of Maya Devi, by this Prashikapatika, by this Avrannika potencies, how can that person either guide himself or others? So Bhagavatam says, don't worry about all this. Don't try to be the person who can patiently unravel the knot. Simply take to bhakti. And how do you take to bhakti? By developing an attraction to Krishna Katha. So once again we see that what the verse says is Kona Puryat Katharuthim. Who will not be attracted to Krishna Katha? So it's a rhetorical question. Sudha Goswami is saying that everybody should be attracted to Krishna Katha, because that Krishna Katha becomes the sword in your hand that will untie you from this impossible knot of Maya. So we hear this theme coming over and over again about the potency of hearing Krishna Katha. Right from first canto, first chapter, verse 16, verse 19, then in the second chapter, verse 8, 12, 16, 17, 18, and later on we'll see many, many verses. They specifically glorify Krishna Katha and Krishna Katha Ruchi, that an eagerness to hear. Even if one is not able to hear, but if one has eagerness to hear, that itself is very potent. We see that in the life of Nag Muni. Like Nag Muni, when he was Dasi Putra, he had no clue about anything. And when the Bhakti Vedantas came to his house, then the only reason he was serving them was because his mother had asked him to serve. And then by that service, he began to hear Krishna Katha. And then he developed this attachment to Krishna Katha, and because of that attachment, his devotional life began. And Narayani Mataji, she shares her own experience that when she was in Boston, she used to go to the temple, but she was kind of what at that time was called a fringy. She would go to the temple, she would come back, she was married, so she would live with her husband. And then one week they found out that Srila Prabhupada was going to be visiting the temple. So when Prabhupada would visit all the temples, they would clean up, they would whitewash. So the disciples then asked Narayani Mataji, why don't you come here, help us clean up the temple and meet Prabhupada? So because she had some attraction for the devotees and she was getting free food, etc. So she said, okay, I'll go and come in for the weekend. So she came in for the weekend, and along with the other devotees, she was cleaning the temple. And while they were doing all this, they were all talking about Prabhupada. Prabhupada does this, Prabhupada does that. And then it so happened that after those 3-4 days, Prabhupada did not come. He had his schedule changed. But then Narayani Mataji says that just by hearing about Prabhupada, I developed so much of attraction to him that she simply moved into the temple. She didn't go back. Well, she went back to get her stuff, but that was enough. She said to break my strong knot of attachment to the material world. So Prabhupada in this purport, he comments that therefore any sensible man who is above the average man with a poor fund of knowledge must constantly remember the personality of Godhead by remembering him, by glorifying him, and by worshipping him always without cessation. That is the perfect way of devotional service. The Goswamis of Vrindavan, who were authorized by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to preach the Bhakti cult, rigidly followed this rule and made immense literatures of transcendental science for our benefit. So Srila Prabhupada would tell to the reporters that other religions come to you with sword. Either you accept my religion or we cut your head off. He says, but I have no sword. But actually he did come with a sword. But he had a different sword. He had the sword of Shravan and Kirtan. And he wasn't cutting off the head. He was cutting off this Hridaya Granthis. He was cutting off this hard knot of material attachment. So Jiva Goswami, when he comments on this text, he says, who will not hear about Krishna, who saves mankind from the greatest misery? All people, according to their positions, can focus their mind on Krishna. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in this context, he defines this as our greatest misfortune, our lack of attraction for Krishna Katha. So this is the second verse of Shishtashtakam, Nam Namakhari Bauddha, Nija Sarv Shakti, Tatrapita Niyamate, Smarane Nakala, Etadidi, Tav Kripa Bhagwan Mamapi, Durdevya Midrisha Mehajani Nam Rag. He says that your name is so merciful that anybody can chant it. But Durdevya Midrasham, this is my biggest fortune, that I have Nanurag. I do not have any attraction to it. In Bhajan Rahasya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gives a more, slightly more analytical reason of this Durdevyam. What is the cause of this misfortune? So I just mention it. We won't discuss it more because each one of them is a topic in themselves. So firstly, he says Tattva Brahma. Tattva Brahma means that philosophical misunderstanding, not knowing who Krishna is, not knowing who you are. The second is Aprad, offenses towards the Lord and his devotees. Third is Asat Trishna, that is attraction for the temporary. And the fourth is Hridaya Dorbulyam, which is weakness of the heart. So this completes the section of verses from 11 to 15, which introduced us to the absolute truth and also introduced us to the path to the absolute truth. So in 1 to 11, Sutta Goswami introduced us to the absolute truth. In 1 to 12, he spoke to us a little bit more about how to attain the absolute truth. And then he talked about the impediments and how to overcome the impediments. So we will end at 1 to 15, and next time we'll start at 1 to 16. So at this point, I'll stop with my speaking, and we'll open up for any discussion or comments. I also wanted to respond, so while you're thinking of what you would like to discuss, there were a couple of questions that I had said that I will take home and answer back. One was, which I did, was Achanta Veda Ve Tattva. The second was between Ashraya and Vishaya. And so based on what I could understand, there is actually, so there's, other than the fact that they sound similar, there is no correspondence between Ashraya and Vishaya. So Vishaya is generally used in the context of the object of material senses. So Vishaya Vinivartante Niraharasya Dena. So when the senses deal with their objects. So Vishaya is generally sense objects, and Ashraya is shelter. So somebody had asked that what is the relationship between Ashraya and Vishaya? There does not seem to be like a parallel relationship. I mean, obviously you can establish some relationship, but Vishaya is sense objects and Ashraya is Krishna. There was another question that was asked a long time ago, that why does the fourth canto be called the fourth creative order? And again, so my understanding is, and this is based on, I recently read something from my Guru Maharaj, that the 10 topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Atra Sarga, Visarga, Sthanam, Poshanam. So the 10 cantos were named after the 10 topics of the Bhagavatam. And the fourth topic is Poshan. And Poshan is the protection given by the Lord to his devotees. So it basically is the fourth in the sequence of the creation that happens. So there is Sarga, the primary creation, Visarga, the secondary creation, then Sthanam, which is Sthanam is the maintenance, and then Poshanam, which is the protection. So the fourth canto talks about, so the protection in this case is the protection given by Krishna in fulfilling the desires. So for his devotees, he fulfills devotional desires, and for others, he fulfills material desires. So the fourth canto talks about all kinds of devotees. So it talks about Dhruva Maharaj, who started off as a materialistic devotee and became a pure devotee. Talks about Prajapati Daksha, who was more of a materialistic devotee. Talks about Maharaj Prithu, who fulfilled the desires of his kingdom, both that he took care of their needs for sustenance by food, but he also took them back to Godhead. So that is the fourth creative order, Poshanam, which is the protection by fulfilling the desires of the devotees. So I think those were the questions that I had in my list. I don't see any other questions, but if I have missed any, please feel free to remind me. And at this point, I'll again turn it back to you and see if there's any discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Gaur Sundar Das, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna Gaur Sundar Prabhu, my obeisances.
Prabhu, you spoke about the one of the verses that was dealing with impediments.
Yes, Prabhu.
Overcoming the impediments. So I was little not clear about which verse was talking about the impediment. Is it the one that was talking about the binding knots of reactionary work? Is that the impediment you are referring to?
Yeah, so this is 1 to 15. So it talks about, so it says that, you cut through the binding knots of reactionary work. So, so this is a practical situation, right? When you ask somebody to take to bhakti, and then they will say that there's so much going on in my life. This is a more experiential instantiation of that. Depending on the situation, they might say that my mind is not at peace, or I have to strive day and hard just to eat. So what are all these? These are all reactions to your karma, the binding reaction to your karma. And this verse says that chidyanti, that you can simply break it away, kudyat katharathim, by developing an attraction to hearing Krishna Katha. So this is a preaching verse, that if you're trying to preach to somebody, and they may not articulate it in such a way that I'm being restrained by the binds of my of karma, but they may articulate it in a more experiential way. That this is happening in my life, Prabhu, this is happening, and I have challenges with my wife, and my health is not good. So what do you do in your mind? You understand that this is karma. And then what does the verse tell you? That katha ruchi, that simply by developing an attraction to Krishna Katha. Now the next verse will say that if the person says that I don't have Krishna Rati, what to do then? That next verse will answer that question, that how to address that situation also. Because even Katha Ratim you cannot externally instill it into somebody, that from tomorrow onwards you have attraction to Krishna Katha. Now developing attraction to Krishna Katha is very easy also. One of the most popular TV serials in India is like Ramayana and Mahabharata and Krishna. Why? Because everybody has a natural attraction to to Krishna Katha. So it's very easy, but even that cannot be artificially instilled. So Sudha Goswami will talk about something that is even easier than that, which will be our discussion in the next week's uh, verses that we speak about. Okay, any other questions, comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandat Pranam. Could you hear me, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Prem Kishore Prabhu, my obeisances.
Oh, Prabhuji, it's a practical question. We were talking about what is that you do. We need to act in a way that pleases Krishna, that is Haritoshanam, right? Just today morning, I don't know if it is a question or a kind of a discussion point here. There are certain rules we set up according to the temple authorities in our deity worship, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing some Prabhupada Arati today. So absolutely no one in the temple, but we do have certain regulations or the rules that we need to put in certain 5 artis, like 5, what do you call for that?
Arti Vix, right?
Arti weeks. So instead, I was acting sensibly, put it to only 1, because it is very hard to even to do that. So I was, is this like, what does it, am I pleasing Krishna by doing, by acting on my own common sense, or am I putting my intelligence in, or into this act that, oh, I need to be more sensible in saving Krishna's energy or something like that? First question is, am I doing like, it's a very basic question, but it is like, it happens to me a lot of times. Like, why can't we be more sensible in doing what we do?
It's it's a good perspective, a practical perspective, and the things that are typically done in these situations is so this process of deity worship has been given to us by Prabhupada, who was given to us based on Hari Bhakti Vilas, and then it has been by the GBC. It has been moderated and accepted as per Kaldesh Patra, and then we follow the process. And if we see that there are certain discrepancies or certain things that need to be adjusted, then the best thing is to take it through the same process.
Follow the regulations.
Follow the not necessarily blindly follow the regulation, but I'll give you an example at our temple that when we offer to the deities incense, so everybody offers 3 incense sticks. That's what has been given. But then the pujaris found out 2 things. One thing was that the altar was becoming black very quickly, and the second was they were themselves developing breathing issues because of so much of, especially because we have 3 altars and 3 pujaris are doing worship. There were 9 incense. So then the temple president went and spoke to the GBC of deity worship and Narsingh Kavach Prabhu, and they discussed it. So it went through the process, and they came back and they said it's okay to use only 1 incense stick. So from then onwards, we started using 1 incense stick. So there was a change that was made, which according to what we thought it is sensible because of the reasons. But rather than making it ourselves, we went through the process. Because the flip side of it is that if everybody acted according to what they thought was the best, then there could be so many variations that might come up, right? Somebody might say, why do we offer only 5 weeks? We should offer 25 weeks to Prabhupada. And, they might, or somebody might say that, whatever. We should do
one perspective. Yeah.
It's a perspective. So that's why we have the rules and regulations, and we have a process of Sadhu Shastra and Guru that while giving us this ability to exercise our intelligence, also helps us to regulate it. So that ultimately what we do is still as per what the recommendations are.
Thank you, bro.
Hare Krishna, this is Paramatma. I'd like to ask a question, please.
Hare Krishna, Paramatma Prabhu. I'm hearing from you after a long time.
Yes, I was traveling in the United States. I was with Satsvarup Maharaj for some time, and like that, I missed a few sessions because the service was so intense. But I'm back on track again. I have, first of all, I'd like to say how deeply inspired I am, by all the presentation that you are making in an ongoing way. Thank you so much. Thank you also for answering my question on the fourth canto. I want to ask something about the page itself. I'm not able to navigate the page, so well like in the past. In the past, it was very, very easy for me to download the audio and listen to it back, and like that. I'm not able to do that so well. I don't know if I could be assisted somehow, because so far I have not been able to get the audio at all, and because I am a slow learner, so to speak. I like to listen to your classes once or twice or thrice, and I have not been able to do that. So
Sure, Prabhu.
Whoever is in charge of the handling the page, if they could guide me through. And another thing is that I'm accustomed to, like in the past, to write my questions. While you're speaking and I'm listening to you, I like to have my questions written and sent to you. But again, I'm not able to figure that out on on the page. How I could just type my question, and then at question time, I don't have to ask. You just read the question. Like that. And my fourth point is that it's more of a question how just like so many verses are describing the importance of hearing, and my simple question is that how can we develop this urge more and more to hear Krishna Katha? What are some of the things? What are some of the things that we have to do by ourselves as devotees? Maybe lifestyle change, whatever it takes. It's because it is such an important thing, and I'd like to know how
Okay.
how can we
Sure.
develop this urge more.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. So I think for the first couple of things that you meant, I'm wondering if Prem Kishore Prabhu can work with you. Is that possible, Prem Kishore Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. I'll take his number and I'll work with Prabhu.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
And so your last question about how to develop more attraction to Krishna Katha. So that actually is 1 to 16, the verse that we'll discuss. And essentially it is, I didn't want to give away Sutta Goswami's thunder, but essentially it is by serving the two Bhagavatams. By serving one Bhagavatam, you get the attraction to hear the other Bhagavatam. So like you gave this particular example of yourself that you were traveling with them, and I'm guessing Satsvarup Maharaj is your Guru Maharaj. So you were traveling with him and serving him. So by serving the devotee of Krishna, one gets attraction for hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, and by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, one develops a desire to serve the devotees. So, so Krishna Katha Rati is is more internal. You cannot will it. You can will it to some extent. That you can say that half an hour every day, 1 hour every day, whether I like it or not, I'll hear it. Which is a semblance of Krishna Katha Rati, but you can externally serve the Bhagavatam. That you can do, even though internally you may not have a strong attraction to Krishna Katha or even to Krishna Bhakti, you can still serve. You can still serve devotees. One of the things that we do, like we have a Namhat, that whenever senior devotees come, we try and have our Namhat group members get an opportunity to serve them, and we try to distribute it precisely because of this verse, that by serving Bhagavatam, you will develop an attraction to hear the Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada talks about the book Bhagavatam and the person Bhagavatam, and how they both nourish one another. So a little bit about it, and we'll speak more so in more details when we discuss next week on this verse.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're also out of time, a little over time. Thank you very much. पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, लीला प्रभुपाद की जय, जय गौर प्रेमानंदे। हरे कृष्ण।
Hare Krishna. Mahatma Prabhu, can you send me the message where I can reach you? I'll go over with you right away if you are available. Can you text me in this chat or?
Well, I don't. That's my question. I don't know how to send text message right now. So I can see the page right now. If you tell me what I have to do, then I could I could follow.
Okay.
At the top of the page, I'm seeing mute. I'm seeing stop audio. I'm seeing share content. I'm seeing participants.
Yeah, you see share screen. Besides that, there is a chat window.